All right, stand by. 10 seconds to go.
Talent. Ready, camera.
And cue talent.
One.
Roll to record.
Bye-bye, Boehner. I'm John Phillips, and this is The Rundown. As you probably know by now, teary-eyed, chain-smoking, suspiciously tan John Boehner has decided to throw in the towel and go lay on a beach somewhere where we can only imagine how much more fluorescent orange he's going to get. His announcement, which shocked the Washington establishment, was met with cheers from conservatives, but he defended his unpopular tenure in an interview on CBS News' Face the Nation. Here's what he had to say. Our founders gave us a system of government, a majority in the House. You need 60 votes in the Senate. Our founders didn't want some parliamentary system where if you won the majority, you got to do whatever you wanted. They wanted this long, slow process. And so change comes slowly, and obviously too slowly for some. He's not wrong that our founding fathers wanted change to come at the will of the people and not despite it. But Boehner is basically saying he couldn't win any victories because voters didn't give him a supermajority instead of just a majority. He went on to quote the Gospel of Matthew. Here's what he said. The Bible says, beware of false prophets. And there are people out there spreading noise about how much can get done. I mean, this whole idea that we were going to shut down the government to get rid of Obamacare in 2013, this plan never had a chance, end quote. So he never had a chance to stop the president's agenda in spite of overwhelming public sentiment in his favor. And anyone saying otherwise, well, they're a liar. So does he have a point? Do conservatives expect too much and resist reasonable compromise? And will the man widely expected to replace him, California Congressman Kevin McCarthy, be any better? Speaking to Fox News, here's what McCarthy had to say, quote, I want to fundamentally change the culture of Washington. We've been governing by crisis. I want to find the most conservative solution I can find, end quote. This has raised concerns that he's going to be quick to compromise on hot-button issues, maybe even immigration. He went on to say that he's not going to criticize Boehner, who is a close ally of his. Here's the direct quote. My job isn't to understand what he did right and what he did wrong. He's a decent man. He passed a lot of great legislation. But if he does win the speakership, will he at least learn from Boehner's mistakes? And could Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell be the next to go? Joining me to talk about all the controversy is author and political satirist Scott Ott. He's in Dallas, Texas. And comedian and PJTV contributor, I almost said writer, but you are a writer as well for The Tatler.
Yes.
Stephen Cruiser. All right, Cruiser. So John Boehner shocked the political establishment, as I said in the opening monologue, by saying that he was not going to stay on as speaker. Is there more to the story than what we're being told?
I think there had been rumors a lot that another coup was in the offing, and this time maybe the coup was going to work. I mean, that's the only rumor I can think of right now, unless, he's got cirrhosis, and we don't know about that yet. It could be. Yeah, I was shocked. I was rolling out of bed last Friday to do a radio hit, and they said, well, they want you to talk about Boehner. And I said, well, what about Boehner? And they said, he's resigning. And I was like, oh, okay. So I don't know. I really think the disgruntlement with the Freedom Caucus and with the conservatives is being heard a little bit. It's making them, and it's easier for that to manifest itself in the House than it is in the Senate. I don't think McConnell will be, I don't know. I just think, I really do think that the irritation by the base, by the Freedom Caucus, by the people in there was getting so strong that he knew his position was untenable. And unlike most politicians now, he got out while the getting out was good, which is you rarely see these days.
You don't want to lose the majority and then get out.
No, you don't want to do it. This was a smart political move. This was one of the savviest things he's ever done, was getting out right now, because he's essentially, as far as his career goes, he's on top.
Scott, put your finger on the point of failure of John Boehner. Was it ideology between him and the conservatives in his caucus, or was it management style?
I think John Boehner failed only insofar as we had expectations. I don't think he failed by John Boehner's lights. I don't think he failed by the general, I'm not even going to say establishment Republicans. I'm going to say establishment Washington, D.C. John Boehner was a success in terms of establishment Washington, D.C. He said in that news conference and at other times, first and foremost, his goal was to protect the institution. Essentially, he said, I'm here to protect the way things have always been. And under Boehner's reign, things were the way they've always been. But the thing that's most disturbing is immediately after the announcement that John Boehner was quitting, the first thing we heard was, okay, well, you can forget about holding up approval of anything in order to cut off funding for Planned Parenthood. It was as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
Where's the power in the House these days? Is it with the Speaker, or is it with the committee chairman? Is it in the leadership, just that structure? Where's the power?
It's with the Speaker if the Speaker's a strong Speaker. You look at the way Nancy Pelosi was. She was an iron-fisted Speaker. I mean, she got people to give up their careers to pass Obamacare. So if you are a strong-willed Speaker and you can put the fear of God into people, then it's still with the Speaker. It's how you use the speakership. I don't think Boehner worked that way. I think Boehner, when he said protect the institution, I'm not so sure I could divorce that from protect myself. I mean, it seemed like he was conflating the institution and himself a lot. So I still think it's with the Speaker if there's a strong Speaker, and it's easy to become a strong Speaker once you've elevated yourself.
You know, Scott, when you look at the battles that go on in the House of Representatives on the Democratic side between Nancy Pelosi and, say, Steny Hoyer, it's not over ideology. Ideologically, they're all on the same page, pretty much going up and down the line. The fights on our side, to my eye, seem to be over ideology. The Freedom Caucus had a very big issue with John Boehner. They thought he was much too moderate for their tastes. You had people outside of that caucus who had the same criticisms. Why is it that the Democrats don't have this ideological battle going on and we do? Is it because we're in the majority and we control a lot of those swing districts, or is there something else going on here?
I just don't think that they're playing the same game that we are. They're not in it for principles. They're not in it for ideology. They're in it for power. They're in it to be able to tell other people how to run their lives and to make those decisions for them. And so all they care about is grabbing a hold of and holding on to power. And the Republicans are not immune to this either. You know, the Freedom Caucus, so-called, is every candidate is in the Freedom Caucus during the primaries. And that's the problem with John Boehner. We understand how Congress works. We understand that you're only about 1/2 of 1/3 of the federal government, but you don't campaign that way. When you're running to get that nomination to be your party's nominee to run for Congress, it's always how conservative you are, what you're going to change in Washington. Kevin McCarthy now, I'm going to change the culture in Washington. You're not going to change anything in Washington. Why don't you just run for office and say, well, we're going to get elected and we'll probably be 1/2 of 1/3 of government and not get much done unless the president thinks it's okay.
Let's assume that Boehner lost the votes and that there was going to be some insurgent, maybe it was Kevin McCarthy, maybe it was someone else who was going to displace him as Speaker. Can we learn more from this in the political world, the right wing, the conservative political world? If John Boehner, as the sitting Speaker of the House, couldn't make it work as being kind of a moderate operator type of guy, is this foreshadowing failure for Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio and people occupying that space in the race for the presidency?
I think so. I think one of the things you're seeing with the rise of Donald Trump, as has been pointed out so many times, is that he at least fights, or that's what people want right now. Boehner said you can't do it with this, you can't do it with that. You can't do it if you never fight either. You can't win in the fights that you don't get in. You'll never hit a home run if you don't swing at a pitch. You know, there are all these things we could say about that, and I think the problem is he doesn't fight. In fact, Peter Roskam, the Republican from Illinois, was on Fox News recently talking about we need to get more aggressive with our rhetoric against the president. And he was saying, he went on in detail to say we need to at least create the appearance of fighting. And what was galling was that he said, well, then the base will buy that. If you just go out and pretend to fight. And he's wrong that the base will buy that, but he speaks to the biggest problem where we're so hungry to see somebody actually fight that they're just talking about, well, maybe we just need to look like we're fighting.
How about it, Scott? Is it foreshadowing
John,
bad news for Jeb Bush?
Yeah, and I think that it's funny because we always say, well, we want someone who will fight, we want someone who will fight. Well, most people who go in with the attitude, I'm going to fight, what you wind up doing is backing somebody else into a corner, and they won't give in because they don't want to lose face, and then they just try to fight their way out, and then it becomes a bloodbath. Can you get more votes than they get, and then you win? But what's the problem with John Boehner is, okay, let's buy his assumption that we don't want to get the reputation of being the angry Republicans, and we need to compromise, and we're in a legislative body and all that kind of stuff. Well, John, if you can't be a fighter, at least be a lover. I mean, win some over, court them, woo them, somehow persuade other people that your way of life and your policies are desirable.
So there you have it. Scott wanted John Boehner to be a better lover. There's your takeaway from today's episode, boys and girls.
Well, he shed lots of tears and he drank lots of wine. I mean, that's consistent with
One thing I want to point out, since Boehner's retired on
Very
Friday,
romantic.
here's a guy, this is why I think the coup thing might be real. He looked so relieved at that press conference where he was saying, he usually gets weepy during any big moment at the press conference where he was announcing it. Free and easy, happy-go-lucky. He's been funny on Twitter since then. I think this is a guy who was very much, swimming in tension for a long time and knew that it was going to get worse because he looks so relaxed since then.
Is there any doubt in your mind that Jeb Bush would look more relaxed if he was out of the race for the presidency?
Not at all. He might even look awake one day.
All right. Scott, talk to me a little bit about Kevin McCarthy, who is the likely candidate to replace John Boehner as Speaker of the House. We know him well here in California. He was the minority leader in the California State Assembly. He represents a very conservative part of a deeply blue state. He represents Bakersfield, but he's known for being an operator. He was Arnold Schwarzenegger's guy in the California State Assembly that made sure the votes were there, even for unpopular legislation with the conservative side of the Republican Party. He was the operator. He was the guy that Kevin Spacey came to and learned how to play the role of Frank Underwood for House of Cards because at the time he was the majority whip. What do you think he's going to bring to the table as Speaker?
Well, I'm hoping he doesn't bring anything to the table as Speaker. I mean, I'm still holding out hope that somebody will be able to find an operator who actually hews closer to the historical Republican conservative ideology. But in frankness, an operator is what you need in that kind of role. I mean, this is why I've always been surprised that most speakers of the House or even the Senate majority leaders, why they go in front of the cameras at all. I think that they should never stand in front of the cameras. First of all, most of them look horrible in front of the cameras. But secondly, that's not their job. They're not there to make public pronouncements. It is really kind of a back room, slap on the back and here, have a cigar kind of role where they are constantly having to persuade and win other people. So with McCarthy's skill set, yes. With his principles and ideology, no. I think all of Boehner's lieutenants should resign with him.
Your thoughts on McCarthy?
I think that if you're disgruntled with leadership, elevating the next guy in line in leadership may not be the best thing for you, but I think it's the most likely thing in this scenario. McCarthy, I hold out a little bit of hope for. At the very worst, I think he'll be less bad than Boehner. When McCarthy first got there, I liked him because he was reaching out to the grassroots a lot then. I mean, he may not be that guy right now, but when he first got there, he was holding blogger conference calls every week when he first got there.
He courts people.
Yeah, he courts people. So he's not like completely dismissive of the grassroots. He had our ears for a while, and he did do a little with that at the beginning. So I can't be a complete cynic all the time because I'm never going to get out of bed anymore. And I got to hope that any change has got to be helpful in this situation. And while I don't think it's going to be, the second coming of Newt Gingrich here, I think it won't be as bad as Boehner. I'm hoping a little bit of hope.
Now I have this visual image of Steven Cruiser in bed with the grandparents on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, but it's so warm.
All
Kevin
right.
McCarthy, he's a lover, not a fighter.
So now it's time to find out what you think. Why did John Boehner fail? And who should replace him? And is compromise a vital tool in a representative democracy, or a code word for the abject surrender of fundamental conservative principles? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.